is July 20th, and it is 5:53, and this is the Public Market Advisory Commission, so we'll call to order. Stephanie, could you do the roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Nemeth, I just heard you.
Here.
Yep. Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
Chair Young.
I'm here.
All right. Well, we are all here for now.
All right. So the next item is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes or anything to add to the agenda?
It looks good to me.
All right, great. Could I get a motion to for it to carry?
I move to approve.
Thank you. Jeff, are you on a second?
I second.
Great, thank you. So the agenda is approved. Next thing on our list is the first public comment.
All right. So I'm not currently seeing any attendees, but maybe we can wait a moment just to see if anybody wants to chime in. Perhaps still not seeing anyone, so we can move on.
All right, so the next item is the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting, the June meeting. Are there any changes? All right, Stephanie, I had just one small one, and this is under, oh, Jeff, did you want to go ahead? No. When we were just talking about the number of people on the commission, and we were talking about 6 to 7, and you said that I wanted 2 representatives from Carytown. I actually didn't mean at least to state it that way. It was just as an alternative of
Right.
what we could do. So if you want to just strike that, but leave Jeff's comment there.
Gotcha. I did write directly out of my notes, so maybe I misunderstood when you stated it.
That's okay. I talk fast, and it was an example. So
great.
Are there any other changes?
It looks good.
With that, could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the June meeting?
I move to approve.
Great. And Jeff, are you okay to second?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, the minutes from the last meeting are approved with that small change, and now we can get on to regular business.
Great. So I have a few general updates. The first 2 are related to vendors. The first one is new vendors. So as you do know, we do keep accepting vendors on a rolling basis. And we've had a few new people start in the last little bit. We had a new produce farm that was actually brought on this spring, but their first day was Wednesday market yesterday. Cedar Field Farm is their name. We also have a vendor that was with us pre-COVID that has returned. They are a tea vendor called Delightitious. They've been coming a few Wednesdays so far, including last Wednesday. And then we have 2 brand new vendors. One did their orientation yesterday. One is actually a bison farm from Ohio, and they specialize in bison meat as well as bison woolen products as well. So it's a family farm from, I want to say Canton, Ohio. I could be wrong on that, but they will be starting sometime in the next few weeks. That's pretty exciting. And then lastly, after many people requesting, we have brought on a new knife sharpener. It's sort of something that we had in the past that we got a very large volume of questions about, and it just so happened that we had another person. His name is Paul Kim. He applied. So it's Paul Kim Sharpening is now with us. So he's done 2 markets so far, and he's already gotten, you both seem excited. So he's already gotten a very good response from people. It was kind of one of those weird things because he doesn't really fit in our categories, right? He's not quite a producer. He's not quite an artisan. What is he? we haven't figured it out, but we figured out, hey, they had one before. We'll just figure that part out later, but maybe that's something for further conversation of what do we do with these sort of service providers that don't really fit in our categories, but still fit within, sharp knives definitely needed if you're going to be cooking with our farmers products. And I think we do have a few more that are just in the queue, but these were the ones that seemed really great. And just to reiterate, we are closed this year for non-food artisans as well as baked goods. We have plenty of those. So we're really just bringing on farms, prepared food, or something unique like the knife sharpening.
Great, thanks so much. So then returning vendor invoices?
Yep. So June 30th was the payment deadline for all of our annual status vendors. We did have everybody pay with the exception of one vendor that has made the decision that they are actually going to give up their seniority because they will no longer be able to be with us as much as they had wanted to. They're going to still become a vendor, but they are no longer an annual status vendor. And that is Lake Divide Farm, which is very sad because we love them and they're certified organic, but they're trying to figure out, what's doable for them to keep their business going. And this year that meant, keeping 2 markets and then dropping down to an occasional status with us, not the 15 times needed to stay in good standing. So, but they're still a vendor. We just don't know how frequently they will continue to be with us.
Great, thank you.
And then also Brian's Farm last year during Move Up had acquired a 3rd stall. They decided they didn't really need that 3rd stall, so they relinquished it. So that means going into the Move Up, which will be happening in September, we're looking at 13 unassigned stalls. And that, means a few things. It has to do with, artisans. Are we at the place where we have any open stalls for artisans to acquire an additional one or to move up? We need to investigate that. And then based on that, we can decide how many daily vendors will get promoted to annual status based on, the availability. Because how that works is that we have to have, double as many stalls open for people that move up. So that may be 6, that may be 5. It, again, depends on the artisan number. But that is all that I have for that item. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments.
I'm curious what happens when someone relinquishes their senior or their annual status or whatever. Then what happens to their seniority? Do they just retain their seniority throughout that so they kind of be at the head of the queue if they wanted to retain it, or how does that work?
No, they get bumped down to the bottom of the list.
Oh wow, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And with Helen, I talked to her about it and she was okay. She was like, actually, it's sort of too much pressure right now for us to be annual status. I kind of sort of like being a little more flexible. So it worked for them, but that's the way the rules work, is that if you are an annual status vendor that's not paid by June 30th, without extenuating circumstances, then they do drop all the way down to the bottom of the list. And if you don't come at least one time per year, you are no longer a vendor and have to reapply, is how sort of those two things work together. But good question.
Great, thank you. And the next is the events.
All right. Well, we are fresh off of our first food truck rally of the season yesterday. It was an absolutely massive turnout, biggest yet, both in terms of trucks and carts as well as customers. It was huge. We had Ain't Dead Yet, the band playing. We had 20 carts and trucks show up. We had 23 signed up, but there was a few illness and, one person couldn't find a babysitter, things like that that came up. So we're down to 20, but still, that's quite a bit bigger than last year. I think last year we had like 13 or 14 was the biggest in terms of showing up, where we had more signed up. So that was great. So that was the breakdown within that was 6 carts and 14 trucks. We did fit everybody and had, 1 spot, maybe 2 to spare. So that was good because we have 23 and 24 signed up for all the next 3. So it was a very helpful trial run to see, how the space could work with everybody. And it worked great. Beautiful weather, if not on the slightly hot side. But it was fantastic. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from people that they really enjoyed themselves, both trucks and customers. So that was fantastic.
Great.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just saying great. I'm glad there was such a good turnout.
Yes, and then there's 3 more. The next one is August 16th. They're, of course, the third Wednesday of the month until October, and that is 5 to 8 p.m. Cool. Other events, we have had some great cooking demonstrations so far. Our third one was last Wednesday, with Chef Nina Love of the Love Experience. She made a roasted vegetable salad with sort of, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but maybe like macerated peaches as the dressing for the salad. So that was her featured seasonal ingredient, was Michigan peaches. And we had about 50 people attend that and get their recipe card and get their free sample to taste, as well as the food safety info that we provided with part of that. And with those demo series, we've done 3 so far. We have 2 more left. The next one is August 2nd, and that is featuring local favorite Chef Ji-Hae Kim from Miss Kim. And we're not sure of her featured ingredient yet, but I'm sure we'll be getting that recipe soon. We're very excited to have her join because, again, she was one of our chefs prior to COVID with these demos. And then the last demo will be in September, featuring one of the cooks from Greener Pastures Market in South Lyon. And then last item that I had on this was our Storytime series. We have the next one for July coming up next week, next Wednesday market. And that's a 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It sort of runs throughout the market with Adventure Crate, which is a woman who sort of does like activities alongside of readings for kids. We've also had a ton of live music this year, both, at the rally last night, during market days. That's been pretty wonderful to be able to have that again on a very, very regular basis. And again, Alex has been working really hard to get that calendar lined up. And we've also been having a ton of community groups participating on Wednesdays. So that is, everything from the Ann Arbor Senior Center to Michigan Farm Link to U of M Social Minds Lab, trying to get kids involved in being excited about science. Was there yesterday. Smartas Refugee Services, many, many things. Growing Hope has been with us. So that's something that's been really great this year, because I think in the past we had sort of had a cap on how many times these organizations could come. And I think it was at 3 before. This year, we actually expanded that to 5. And I think before the practice had been kind of like to minimize how many per time. But, we're of the mindset this time that Wednesday we've got space. Why not invite as many people as possible to do special things? The Ecology Center has also come to teach people about sort of like how to sort waste properly. And they were actually at the rally last night. So that was super helpful, telling people, which thing is compostable, recyclable, all that great stuff. So that is all that I have for the events. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments.
That's great. Was last night Zero Waste event, or was it just an awareness event?
Well, they were there for an awareness of it.
Okay.
And the way we had done it is, we recommended and requested that everybody did use service items that were either compostable or recyclable. But since we're still living with what's the word I'm looking for? The supply chain disruption. We felt like it wouldn't be fair to kind of force carts and trucks to do that if those items wouldn't necessarily be available to them. But strongly worded. But we did see some great items. One of the trucks was using to-go containers that were actually made out of recycled plastic bottles. So that was something that was pretty interesting. Lots of compostable items too. But yes. So we're hoping that the Ecology Center will come back for the next rallies as well. Because I know in the past we had a lot more volunteers prior to COVID. to help us with the zero waste, whereas not so many volunteers this time for that.
That would be amazing if they could come, especially if the vendors are providing compostable things, because
Yep.
I hate getting my stuff in compostable containers and then not having any compost bin to put it in.
Right. Right. And the wrinkle now is that the city is changing its policy in terms of what it's even allowing to be composted. Unfortunately, they're going to no longer allow any of the, compostable cups or cutlery. So that's another new announcement in the last couple weeks.
I did not know that. Thanks for letting us know.
I hadn't heard that either.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know if they have made the public announcement yet, but they definitely made it to facilities. So I can find the email and I'll share it with you.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right.
So I think we're now on to facilities and repairs.
Facility and repair. So I would like to invite Adam Burcho who is Ann Arbor Parks planner and landscape architect, as well as many other things. He was our lead on the ADA audit thing. I don't know exactly what your role was. You can go ahead and describe it yourself so I don't botch it any further. Go ahead, Adam.
Thanks, Stephanie, and hi everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I'm a park planner, landscape architect. I manage a lot of the capital improvement projects that happen around the parks. To do everything from large scale, our comprehensive plan, our pros plan, our ADA study, down to installing benches, locating planners, thing like that. I think Hillary Hansel is my counterpart, and she's been here in the past, but this is my first time coming. So thanks for having me. So what I wanted to come today to talk about is you've probably noticed a large hole that's been dug near the northwest corner of the office building, the market building. We are doing an exploratory kind of investigation. There was some washout happening at the sidewalk there, and it was starting to drop a little bit. And so we are trying to figure out what's going on with it. So over the past week, we've had Hubble, Ruff, and Clark, who we have as a standing contractor or consultant. They are structural engineers, architects, and civil engineers. We've been working with them to dig out that corner and to see what's going on. We don't have any answers yet. They're still doing their study, and we should be getting a report back in the next week or so, which we'll share with you. But I just wanted to get it out there because I know it's a visible spot and we've probably already got some questions on it. So there's nothing wrong with it yet that we know of. We're just still doing our exploration. So once the engineers kind of wrap up their report, we'll backfill in that hole and it should be fine for a while until we make whatever repairs are necessary. So that's why the hole is there, and it probably will rain for another week or two. So if there's any questions on that, I'm happy to answer it.
No questions on that. But Adam, you're a perfect person for us to ask in terms of PMAC would love to move the conversation forward about long-term planning for the market. And I know it was an important part of the pros plan is to really support the farmers market. And so thinking about what that process is and how we can help with that, we would invite everybody to become part of that conversation. And there was the plan for the building long ago, and then nothing's been happening. I've asked Stephanie about this a couple of times with the need for ADA planning and things like that. If we could really think creatively about making the farmers market an incredibly welcoming space and more hospitable for the vendors during the wind and the cold and things like that.
Yeah, and happy to be a part of those conversations. So I know Hillary's been working more with the winterization, the shelters, things like that. So I haven't been involved too much with that. But in terms of the ADA study, where we are is we have a 90% draft right now. And so what that has done is it's kind of gone through the market, located all of the accessibility barriers. Once we get the final report, what we'll be able to do is start planning. So we'll be able to start looking at the site, how it functions. I mean, as you know, it's not totally accessible right now. There's a lot of challenges out there. What I'm hopeful with this exploration of the market building is this could become a chance to kind of re-envision how that space works in terms of accessibility. Because I know right now we've got that curb right by the window, which isn't accessible and was flagged. And so whatever we do here with the sidewalk in front of it, I think this is a good time to actually envision how that can play out in a better manner. So I think it's one of those things that as we move forward, we'll definitely be engaging with you on what makes sense to do out there. And so this is kind of the first step. And I mean, along with our pros plan, so we've had our Parks and Recreation open space plan, the ADA plan. It's kind of helping build a picture for the park system as to kind of where we need to be spending money and what upgrades need to happen. So we've received a lot of good feedback on these plans over the last 2 years, and so I look forward to start making some changes here, and especially looking at the market as a whole.
I'm wondering too if you could kind of give a little sense of kind of timeline and process about kind of how like what timeline are we talking about, and in terms of is it like over a year, multiple years, and also in terms of what kind of in terms of this process we're kind of going through this arc of updating the market in terms of from your perspective. I mean, we're kind of on our edge over here, but it's driven by parks. And so that giving us some insight into your process as to how do you prioritize, how do you make your decisions, how do you a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more clarity would be helpful for us so we kind of know how to interact best with you guys.
Yeah. So as far as I guess I'll kind of step for like the ADA plan as a whole. So what that looks is at the park system. I think what's being talked about, it's 30 years to bring everything up to speed. Now that's not to say the farmers market's in 30 years. What we do is there's a prioritization that's being developed right now, which isn't something that has to be held fast, but it gives us an idea of where users are using the park, what parks are being used the most, what funding they need. So we're going to take a look at this 30-year span in our capital improvement projects. So for instance, this market building, whatever is being done there, what we'll do is we'll start saying, hey, we have a project here. What accessibility barriers are there and what can we attack at that point? So we're trying to link up kind of for ADA accessibility and overall planning, what needs to be done now, and then kind of bring those in. So what could be a smaller project could maybe expand a little bit into something bigger. So I think this is kind of a great case for looking at the circulation of the market building. Like what's going on now is kind of what's dictating us really looking at this and pushing it forward. And then, yeah, I think a lot of it is funding and being able to identify grants. So we're always looking for grants, and these studies are helping us figure out what's out there funding wise that we could go after. So that's a big component as well. And so, yeah, right now it's really just when we're seeing these issues come forward, it's giving us an opportunity to really dive into it and see if there's more we can do than fix our problem at hand. So I think this is kind of a great example of what we can do. Yeah, so I don't have a specific timeline, but that's kind of our process at working right now. We have 160, I think it's 164 parks right now. And so it's seeing how all of that plays into kind of the bigger park system is how we're handling it at the moment.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I would like to encourage parks to think about big picture grants with the farmers market. There's lots of money out there for local food. And food sovereignty and food access, and like to help in any way that we can with those resources too. And I'm sure Stephanie knows about a lot of them as well. But
and I would encourage, please send grants my way. It's something we can always take a look at and see where it fits. So I am 100% happy to kind of look at whatever's sent our way. We're just trying to figure out like what's out there, things like that. So if there are grants that you know of, I am happy to take a look at them and see how they can fit.
Stephanie, do you already have access to some of the local food grants? And I know Katie Armentrout was telling me about some of them too.
Yeah, we had a meeting with her right when she took over at that. I know we haven't really been looking at anything directly recently because we had focused on getting the grant from Michigan Farmers Market Association for the food safety stuff for our cooking demos. But yeah, feel free if you have access, maybe put together a letter and I can share it with Adam, or you can share it directly with him, either way. And then we could plug in that direction.
Great.
And I just want to say too, like, I'm really excited about the possibility of this fix to the building, meaning that we'll be curbless sooner rather than later. Because, you know, that was something that we had identified during what we had seen from the ADA. So that is something that could be good about this. Other things, you know, like we obviously have a lot of needs for storage that are not being met at the current moment with the market office building. So, you know, there's all sorts of other things that this could fold into. So I think Adam has departed or got kicked off or something like that. So,
well, thank you, Adam. Any other questions about facilities and repairs from anybody?
I had just a few other things that I wanted to add in, which were just more basic. We have some areas with crumbling concrete that we are waiting. Oh yeah, there he is. Yeah.
Sorry about
He
that.
disconnected there. I was like, well, there he's gone now. So,
End.
yeah, I was like, wow, that was abrupt. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you very much for coming, and
yeah.
I'll start putting together some resources if anybody else. I'll happy. Please.
And I was
them.
saying that I'm really excited about the prospect of this building fix, meaning that we're going to go curbless like sooner rather than later. Because I know that's been something with our friends or customers that use wheelchairs that want to come to the token window. As it works right now, we just go outside and help people directly, which, you know, is fine. We're okay with doing that, but you know, it would be wonderful to be curbless. The one thing in the back of my mind that I think about when we go curbless, does that mean when people are backing out of the parking space, are they going to go straight into the building? But
we'll work on that so that hopefully doesn't.
Like in the back, but that's in the back of my mind. A big truck just like going straight through the window. But
truthfully, that's all things that need to be thought about. Like those
yes.
are circular.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just making the gutter. I mean, it kind of changes how it works a little bit. So those are real things.
Exactly. And then also just the prospects of, you know, maybe we'll actually have storage now that we don't have enough of if we have to do a redo of the building or, you know, whatever happens. This is a good sort of jumping off point to be able to do that stuff.
For sure.
The other thing I might bring up too is the advantage of ADA getting that greater compliance is it's better for the farmers too, in terms of, if you rolling carts in, it's universal design. And so that once you get all those and just, or people working there tripping, you know, we're all human. So it is a win for one is a win for all. So I think that's really addressing that is an important part. So.
For sure. For sure.
Right. And there's parts of the sidewalk that are sort of sinking too in the vicinity of where the exploration is happening on the walk up to the other side. Like if you're coming from the 4th Avenue side into the market. So it's going to help all of these things.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Adam. Feel
Thank you
free
all.
to tell us any more stuff at your leisure. Just if there's anything you want to share with the commission, just email me or email us all and we can put it into the conversation.
Sounds
and
good.
Let us know how else we can support.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Have a good rest of your day.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So yeah, the last thing I was saying prior to his rejoining was that there are some areas of crumbling concrete. I think there was something with the person who specialized in that in park ops was on vacation because it's gotten really, really bad in the Shetler stall very close to the market office building to the point where one of the Shetler girls almost tripped on it last week. So we're hoping that while this broader thing is being explored, that can be repaired as well. And there's, you know, other areas where it's just that time of year where the concrete starts to crumble. Obviously, you know, being salted so much in the winter just certainly does not help our market surfaces. And I think that's the only other thing I really had for facilities. Let me just double check. And there's just a few gutters and the usual dings and things that happen. But other than that, the main thing is the building foundation. And I don't know if you've noticed it, but it's pretty much the corner as you look at the office building where the solar display is. It's just to the right of that. It's all coned off right now. And was an interesting feature during the food truck rally last night because that was adjacent to where the band was playing. But and it's one of those things too that we kind of noticed it when the snow melted. All of a sudden, oh, there's a big gap here that sort of like this between the building and the concrete that was not there before. So that's what led to this. It's just taken a little while for them to start the exploration.
Remind me, Stephanie, I think that building's from the 80s.
1984. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So looking forward to seeing what the report says so we can know more about what's going on and what the process to fix it looks like.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So that is all I had for that.
Next up is PMAC openings.
All right. So PMAC. So I had to scour Legistar earlier this week because Jeb was like, what's the deal? Am I appointed yet? And I was able to find in the minutes from City Council that he had been appointed. And then I did get the email confirmation yesterday. So obviously it was not enough turnaround time for him to be with us this evening. But he's really excited to join next week. To refresh everyone's memory, he will be the daily vendor representative. He is an artisan. His business is Vogue candles. He's got very unique soy-based, Michigan-inspired. Many of them are, what's the word? Well, he could probably tell you better than I can, but they're scents that are inspired by places in Michigan.
Great.
But yeah, so next week, we still need a Carytown rep. I have not heard anything from anybody about this. So if you know anyone, please keep putting the feelers out. That would be great to get somebody.
And I did send that email to the Carytown District General email. I
Right.
CC'd you on it,
Right.
and I didn't get any responses.
Okay.
So
well, it's also hard time of year
Yeah.
to fill anything and also right now in the middle of art fair, people are probably waiting to get through that
yeah.
before adding anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it was I think a week or two ago, but yeah, maybe I'll do
Yep.
another ping.
Cool. But the good news is we are at least have full vendor representation again. So that is good. And to also have an artisan voice should be great. And that is all that I had for my general updates.
Okie doke. So that takes us on to continuing conversations. And the first thing on the list is the bylaw changes.
Yes.
Peter, thank you for putting together the document.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we made good progress, and thanks, Lisa, too, for your help in trying to get that forward too, because it's been a process for trying to get this through. But I think what I've got now, I should have a link to it in your the notes for today. But
Yep.
essentially, it's what we had previously with all the little corrections and every little line and strikeout annotated, so as to get the numbering right and get some, our language consistent with what I, at least within itself.
Right.
The only thing that was a slight modification from previous was that there was, last time we ended up with some ambiguity about, so it seemed like there was consensus about adding another person to the market, so going from 5 to 6, and that one would be someone from the market themselves. And then Lisa and I were kind of exploring a little bit quickly too, and that it seemed like maybe a way around for the 7th would be just having the 7th one be from all categories above, versus trying to get it from someone else on another committee. That would be great, but that's a really hard ask. And it seems like, again, like today too, we have a very small group I think having a little bit more capacity in there would be helpful. And that the nice thing I like about the seventh person being kind of someone at large, but someone who, within those pre-designated groups beforehand, is that it will allow us to be more flexible based on needs. So that if there are periods where we need more public input, then we could be someone from Carytown, from a shop or whatever, or if we need more market input, we could get someone from that group too. So that it allows us to kind of dynamically adjust based off of what kind of the big issues we're dealing with in the future. So that's what I propose. It's kind of a difference for that, and I wanted to discuss that, make sure that people get people's thoughts on that.
So I did reach out to the clerk and try to ask the questions we had about, can we have 6? Does it need to be 7? And the other questions, and I have not heard back yet, just to give an update on that. I know it's not that helpful, but
it's
the
good to
questions
ask,
have been asked.
That's good. And
They
it
have
might
not
help
been
once we give them something concrete, and then I'll be like, oh, okay, I have to deal with it. So
Right.
But,
Right.
So Jeff, do you have thoughts that I think you're the one that I've heard that I want to make sure you're good with that? Oh, Jeff might be. We can't hear you, Jeff. I don't know if you're muted or if you're.
Oh, I think
it
he got
just dropped off.
kicked off. Might be having some internet issues.
Some technical difficulties.
Yes.
So what might be, and Lisa, do you have any other comments for this too? Well,
No, I think it looked great.
Okay. So I guess the question then with this is, 1, getting Jeff's input, and 2, we have this new vendor person coming on too. So that in terms of voting, that one option would be to vote today and to advance it forward, get it to legal, see what they say, see if there are any issues with that. The other option would be to wait until next time and get the new person on. The challenges with that is, I hope they actually read it. Just getting them on to rubber stamp something is kind of would be not a useful exercise for them or for us. And so I don't know if they would have opinions about that or not. I can't know until we have them on.
Right. And I'm just remembering the minutes, and I know that Jeff had said last time he thought we had enough people, but I don't know beyond that, obviously.
So we have enough people on the board already, you're saying?
Right.
Yeah, that's why I want to know Jeff's comment too. So I want to hear his input and make sure we've got that. So maybe given where we are with discussion, and if Jeff's having connection issues, maybe tabling that for the moment, and then we'll revisit this until next time. Does that seem reasonable? Okay.
Yep.
So, So,
makes sense.
That's great. Stephanie, when Jeb comes is official, can you just make sure he has the document and just ask him to read it over, because especially the changes that are being made, a lot of it's just pro forma, but just to give him a little advance notice that we
I actually sent it to all vendors.
Oh, okay.
So everybody should have access
already. And when did you send it?
Earlier this week.
Okay.
I sent the most recent version. I always send them, telling them that this is happening, minutes, agenda, etc. And I just added that in the email.
Did you hear anything back from them, or is there any feedback or anything? Or?
I think he's actually in North Carolina now, because his wife is a flautist and is at a music festival down there. So I don't think he really had the opportunity to look at it, but he's excited to join and do everything in the August meeting.
And have you heard anything from any of the other vendors, I guess is our other question.
Not about the bylaws, but I did hear when we talk in a minute about the survey stuff. Okay, great. I guess, Peter, you and I, when we're at the market, we can just do our informal, hey, you read the bylaws?
Exactly. I've got a copy right here.
Here you go.
Oh, there's Jeff's coming back on.
Oh, great.
Hi, Jeff. Are you back?
Yeah, it kicked me off for some reason. I'm back now.
That's how the internet
did that
goes.
to Adam too. I don't know why he said that it did.
So I just wanted to get your comments too about, because I know that you expressed some concerns about expanding the board a little bit more. And so with this idea of going to 7, with the 7th person being someone included in the other list, but not defined yet. So it could be, or not defined. So it could come from a local person, a shopper, Carytown representative, annual or daily. I wanted to get your read, if are you supportive of that, or are you hesitant with that, or what are your thoughts?
Well, my only hesitations would be that if we ever came across an issue, which we might, that could be maybe there's a discrepancy between daily and annual vendor, not between two vendors, but like an issue that maybe would. I just feel like right now, the way it sits, to have a daily and an annual, I feel like it's a level playing field. I'm going to use those words. I hate that terminology, but I'm going to use it anyway, because it's not, you know what I'm saying. But I just feel like that could skew if we voted on something, which is very unlikely. It's just something that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. And that could go both ways. Even though I'm an annual vendor, it might not necessarily be fair to have 2 annual vendors voting on an issue that
Right.
it would be unfair to the daily vendors. So it could go both ways, honestly, because and that's my only concern. I'm just thinking out loud.
Right.
And so that would be true if we had 6 or 7, and that just any other vendors in there, would that be the issue?
Correct. I'm just saying, I feel like as far as vendors go, I feel like, and you could use the same thing for, let's say we brought someone else from Carytown in. I don't know. It's just a concern that I have. It's not necessarily even a plausible concern. It's just something that comes to mind. Because if we are a board that votes on things, to have it weighed one way or the other could not necessarily be a good thing. That's my only concern with the whole thing, really.
Mhm.
And to follow up with that too, there's been that concern expressed too with this board, because it has more non-vendors than vendors in terms of, and that's a little weird too. But it's balanced, but it's not balanced.
Yeah, I totally understand. And I mean, at the end of the day, I would hope that everybody on the board here would have the best interest of the market at stake, and that's what it's all about. And I believe that's the case. I believe that to be the case now. So, that's,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And with the 7th member, it could always be, there could be 4 vendors on the commission, and then it could be 2 dailies and 2 annuals, or it could be alter in the representation.
Yeah. And then my other concern, I guess, would be if we have to have certain amount of, is it a percentage that we have to have to vote on something, or is it a number? Like, I guess what I'm saying is, if there's more members, how many people is it right now that need to be present to vote on something?
I think we need to have a quorum, which would be the majority. And so if there are more people, it kind of works the other way too, in terms of if we have more people, then the odds of, if one person drops out, we're not like, here right now, if we had 2 people out, we can't do anything.
Right.
Whereas if we have 7 people and we have 2 people out, we can still work.
Gotcha.
If we have 7 people and we have 3 people out, we can still work.
Yeah.
So it's actually trying to get more robustness on that side by having a larger thing. So you just need to have a greater than ability to vote on the majority of the.
Okay. I see what you're saying. You're looking at it one way. I was looking at it the other, and once you explain it to me, it makes sense that way. Yeah. Okay.
And I hear you, what you're saying with the balance and things like that, as to how that could cause problems. And I think the idea with that, at least looking at the bylaws, is conflict of interest and things like that. If it does end up being like, wait, you're voting on something that really affects you as a class, as a group, then we need to make sure we're really aware of that. And again, that's where that rule comes in. And it's always a problem because this board is made of people who have often inherent vested interests in some of these decisions that we make. And that applies if it's whatever whatever mix we have. If we have more, it does make it a little harder. That's true, it can. But it's also just being aware of both that we have those written in the bylaws and we should exercise those if need be in appropriate times. As that's what they're guardrails to make sure that stuff like that doesn't derail us from doing our job, doing this correctly. So what I was proposing is that we have the one more member who's, I guess, officially now on the group, so that we'll table this for this time. Then we'll have the new member read it through, and then the plan is we'll vote on it in the August session. That sound good?
I think that sounds like a great plan.
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
Stephanie,
that sounds good.
great. Thanks, Jeff. And Stephanie, then the process is it goes to the city and they review it.
Right. I think it's basically that it needs to go to the legal and then make sure all the language is okay, and then council has to vote on it.
Okay, great. All righty, good. Thank you all for those great discussions, and Peter, thanks again for bringing the bylaws up in the first place. They definitely, after 10 years, needed to be reviewed. So that's great. All righty. And then the next item on the continuing conversations is the survey for the vendors.
Yep, and I just did want to remind everybody that we had tabled the producer-only conversation until the next person joins too, so we can actually resume that conversation as well in August.
All right, so news about the survey.
Yes. We're still working on it, but I did get some feedback from one of the newer daily vendors who wanted to actually put a question on there about the market hours, and whether or not, or just wanting to know, what are people's thoughts on it? Should they stay the same? Should they be changed? Should there be, enforcement if people come late or things like that? And that was the question that they sort of really wanted to put onto there. Because again, it's not just about the 4 stalls, it's also about, anything else that we wanted to put together. Because again, we want to make sure we can ask a bunch of different questions and not just one, if we're going through the process of putting together the survey. So I wasn't sure if anyone else had any questions that you wanted us to put on there. I've been working on it with Alex and Hannah as well. But that is the one feedback that I did get from when I sent that email out earlier this week.
So Stephanie, what are the other questions that you guys have thought of for the survey?
Let me see if I can pull up the draft that we had. Obviously, one is about the 4 stalls, and whether or not that should happen for annual status vendors that need it. And in the event there, what would be the circumstances for that to happen? Let me just try to get the document that we had been working on. 1 second. Let me see. All right. One more, sorry. Well, I know there was also the question that, you had brought up, Peter, about the backspace and whether people understood sort of, like the different stalls have different spacing. And that, for example, if you're on the sidewalk spot, that you'll need to keep it open or, have a walkway still through there, and have that available. and things like that. And I think we've just been sort of brainstorming to see, what else could be on there. And I know there was a few more that I'm just not remembering, and I unfortunately cannot find the document that we were working on. I think it's actually at the office and not with me here. But I think we were trying to make it not super long, maybe 4 questions with sort of sub questions in there. So it would be, the 4 stalls one. This question about hours we can add. Producer only, I think we were going to have something in there as well. And I just wasn't sure if anyone else had any other things that they wanted to add or that they wanted to ask the vendors.
And is this like a multiple choice? Is there a comment section? Is there sort of ranking within the questions or something like that?
It really just depends on what the question is going to be.
Okay. I don't know exactly how to word this, but it would be great to get input from the vendors on sort of what they see some of the challenges as. But I was thinking it needs to be structured in some way.
Right.
Is it wind? Is it temperature? Parking is always going to be a problem, but also the electricity. I don't know about the predictability of the Wi-Fi. But I was wondering if you can structure a question in terms of ranking things. What do they think is the most important and what is the least important? If you can do one of those scalar questions, that might be interesting to ask. Just also thinking about if we can get parks to think about the possibility of replacing the covering that's already there. It would be great to just have the information on what the vendors thought were some of the big challenges for them.
Sure. I just, it's a hard thing, right? Because we don't want to turn it into like, tell us everything you think is wrong. And then it just goes into this thing. So that's the other thing. We're trying to like keep it short and keep it focused. And that's the other thing. Like, I don't think we're going to have open-ended, like, tell us your opinion on X, because that could just, sort of go off the rails, or it could be fine. It just would be a lot of work also for us to assess it and process that information. But of course we're interested. We do want to know. That's why we're having this. But perhaps we could figure out a creative way to do that sort of emphasizes what they like as well about the market.
Well, I think too that, and it's kind of maybe for the meta questions are important in terms of like in this case, there are a number of really clear things, like the 4 stalls question is a really concrete one. And that's something that, we as PMAC, you as market manager, that's a policy question that is really closed in. But if there are other objectives we want to achieve with this, as again, kind of like with the parks thing, if we're trying to gather evidence to make an argument, and that argument is, let's say that winterization is a priority, and it's not necessarily about be a scientist about it and actually ask the question. And it may well be, it's not a priority. Well, then drop it because it's not a priority, or it's a super high priority. We should do something about it. And that if that's the case, then ask the question and gather data, and then that becomes a tool for us as Brian. Again, I'm totally self-centered in talking about PMAC because that's what my job is here. But as to how do we prioritize what we prioritize, and if there's something that's what I would like to get from it. And the 4 stalls one is a clear one. The other one is like, let's say for us in terms of our plan for the next year, what should we bother to push hard on, and which things should we let slide? And so if there's something like, or if we get a clear signal that's like, this is really something that's driving, at least from a vendor perspective, and it's be useful to do with customers too. But just that's as a useful kind of information hygiene in terms of just getting these data in a more objective sort of way, and then using those to guide our process versus like, well, I personally think this is a priority, well, who cares?
Right.
It's like I'm here to represent. I'm not here to have opine my own personal positions on these things. So I think that would be, those data are the conduit in which we get that kind of information, or can be if we ask it.
So Peter, are you thinking about a question that would ask what could be for PMAC or for the market in general?
I think that would be interesting in terms of it, and if it is open ended, and it depends how you want to handle how we want to handle this too, because it could be too that it's a lot of data to analyze. That's what I do for a living. I'd be happy to do that, to take that and synthesize that. But that again, a question of how you want to handle. I'm not the designer. I'm not the PI of this project. You are. And so that Stephanie is the one who's leading this thing, so that I can assist and I can guide, but I'm not the one who leads it. And so
Right.
But that's what that but if it were, it's like, what are we trying to, as long as we have kind of it's like when you do this, or when I've done this stuff before, it's like, okay, I need to imagine I've got all the data on hand. Now what I'm going to do with it, and if there's nothing I can do with it, don't bother collecting it, because it really doesn't, it's useless. It's just a lot of busy work, versus it's like, okay, I've got this and it will go A or B. And if it's A, I do this. If it's B, I do that. Okay, good. It was worth collecting. So now I have a plan as to how I'm going to use those information. And so that's the same thing with advocacy, in terms of like, hey, well, here we're looking for this, getting the bathroom sink fixed is really, really a high priority, and we should really be pushing for that. Oh, okay. Well, it's and we have data for it. Like 9 out of 10 farmers approve, this message. That's concrete, and it's like we asked them in an unbiased way, and we got this result. That's useful information.
So I guess
And I think the other use of this is to make sure that people do feel heard and feel like they do have the opportunity to chime in. We just also have to structure it in such a way that it doesn't turn into everything under the sun, so that there is no clear picture, because everybody has a different thing that really bothers them, or they really like. So that's the reason why I really don't want to have open-ended questions as much as possible, because it can just lead in a place that's not useful, I think, for our purposes here.
Because they could be the questions of but what are the 3 best things, what are the 3 worst things, and that those are useful in terms of, they can be, and it can be, it's going to ask for gripes, and gripes are good to know, and it does let people to be heard. Also, it makes them give useful things, and it is a challenge to synthesize those,
right?
But that's it's like a coding question in terms of
Sure.
how do you actually go through and define these into clusters of groups, that's like, okay, well, this is there are 3 votes for this, 6 votes for that, about, it's hazy, but that's about where it goes, that it can be a very long response and very angry, but it still just gets a point. That's all it is a point, and it tells where these things go. Or it can be very friendly and whatever. It doesn't, the emotional content is more about just what's the request, and being able to synthesize that, and that it takes some doing. But again, as I would be happy to help with that, or that is something that would be is very doable.
Stephanie, I kind of like Peter's idea of if people were just given I just had to fill out something for a workshop, and it was in 3 words, pick 3 words about how you feel about something, and it really actually forced me to think about things. And so if Peter's idea of what are the 3 best things about the market in 2 words, what are the challenges of the market for you, and then Peter's offering to take that data and I mean, if it's only words, it's easy to do it in a word cloud too. You can just dump them in and analyze it that way. So are you open to that? We hear your hesitations.
I mean, my main hesitation is I know who the vendors are, And I know that there's going to be certain people that use this opportunity to give us information that's not necessarily in line with what we're asking. So I'm just trying to tread lightly in terms of that is my
'Cause
main thing.
The other thing with that too is that oftentimes, just like the internet, that there are always some people who are very squeaky and very loud,
Right.
and that they end up taking up a lot of the oxygen.
Exactly.
But there's 95% of the rest of the people who often then shrink in the background, and that there's
Right.
a lot of really useful information. And so that's where
Right.
actually requesting this, well, it's like, yes, I hear you. There's a very loud, very
Right.
vocal minority here, but there is, in a broader picture, these other things and other people who've got other issues which may be different or maybe the same, and
Sure.
we don't know because it's like drowned out by this the a few very loud voices. So that would be a way to kind of give some balance to that, just numeracy, just democratize that a little bit.
Right. And that's the main reason I don't want to do open-ended questions, right? That's back to that same thing, because I feel like it's going to invite a type of response that's not constructive to like our end goal. Because again, all these people that are going to like write a novel about that, this is stuff that they've already told us in person. And it's great to quantify it, but not so necessary here. So that's kind of why we're just crafting it in a way that does keep it focused, does keep it specific. So I think that's agreeing with what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think I maybe not, because I wonder, because it's like I actually having that, even if it's a long novel, that it's, for me at least, is different. Maybe it's because it's not like I'm more outside that system. And so it's like I've not necessarily heard, or it's like, okay, again, it's a point. Here's an observations. Okay. And that they get pushed into the data. And now you've got kind of a space of relative weighting of issues. But it doesn't, even if it's a paragraph or it's 3 words, fine, at least for me.
Right. Well, sociological systems, I mean, like what we'll do when that happens is if there's somebody that has an interesting response, then you go back and do a follow-up interview, right? It's not necessarily something I'm trying to capture in a survey, because that's really just supposed to be like a small snapshot. And that's the other side of it, is coming from being a sociologist is where I'm thinking also. Because social research is a little different than other data collection systems.
So, but in the responses, couldn't it be, it's a short response instead of a paragraph response? So could we ask them for a list of the things, I don't know what platform you're using for your survey. If 3 best things about the market, you have less than 100 words to do that.
Right. Well, that's not open-ended necessarily, right? Like that's still structured. That's still saying like, give us specifically. Whereas the other one is like, tell us your
Right.
grievances or positive, like that's way less
But
structured.
if we
And
did it,
that's sort
let's
of what
say
I'm saying.
Google Docs or the Google survey thing, then that essentially in that case is just field.
Right.
And then those are really easy. Those I use those mostly with things like, because then it's easy to share, it's easy to process through, it's easy to structure in a fairly, it's all digital, it's clean that way.
Right. Well, the only issue is then it's not accessible to people that are our vendors that don't use technology. So we, like how we did it before, is we just had a piece of paper that we mailed out with the application that we're already mailing out. So, or we could have both options available or something.
So we've talked about a lot of things. Are we at the place? I totally get the open-ended, not wanting open-ended, but if it was a like short answer question about listing 3 great things about the market, 3 challenges about the market. I'm seeing hesitancy, Stephanie.
I mean, we could have it. It's just not finalized yet.
I think it would be useful information.
I think it would be too, for the planning for the kind of what PMAC should prioritize. That would be, for me, that would be useful information.
from a vendor perspective. Yeah. That would give us that vendor perspective.
I don't have that insight because I'm not a vendor.
Right. Right. And, you know, I mean, a lot of the things, you know, even if that's the other thing, is like there's some people, let's talk about the hours thing, right? People that have been at market for a really long time are used to the hours, may not have an issue with them at all. But for newer people, getting used to that earliness is hard, you know, and then balancing that with the fact that we certainly do have customers shopping before markets open on a regular basis. So, you know, like, how do we balance what the vendors want with what the customers want, with what staff needs? You know, all of these things come together. So that's another thing I think it's important for vendors to understand too. Like, these are great suggestions, but it doesn't necessarily mean we'll be able to put everything into play. And I don't necessarily think that they will think this, but that's partly why, you know, I don't want to have like a big open-ended thing where it's like, well, that's fantastic, we may agree with you, but, you know, that's not actionable, or, you know, there's nothing we can do about that. Or you're the only person out of 120 people that, you know, feels this way. That's the other aspect of all of this.
Yeah, I hear you with that, and that there are definitely some things. It's kind of the procedural justice thing too, and sometimes of saying like, hey, you know, I want this, and I know that it would be better for me if this happened, and I at least get my voice heard for that,
Right.
and that's a plus. The other thing with it too is that I know some folks who have really generalized things of say it's like, oh, you know, I believe this, so therefore everyone believes this, and it's like, oh, okay, well, the data actually show that you're 1 in 100 that do, which is not to dismiss that it is being a problem for you, but it's more that it would be that's like, okay, this is just to put it in context. That's not that there are data behind that to show that that's I hear what you're saying, but it's not we're not taking it as a priority because it as an issue from a bias. So. Or
there might be a lot of opposition, right? It might just be something that like you feel really strongly about, but a lot of other vendors feel very strongly in the opposite direction. And, you know, just based on our experience with how long it took to adopt the sign-in process changes, you know, that we were already using, I think is really indicative of this as well. That there's people that think still that, you know, 2+ years was too quick, even though that was already something that was in place. So, you know, not gonna please everybody. That's what it comes down to. But I think it's important that we at least give people the voice to share on certain choice issues. Because that's the other thing with this producer only, right? This is something that certain people really care a lot about. Other people maybe have no idea what it even is, or it doesn't impact them at all. So, or winterization. I mean, there's a lot of people that might not even have product in the winter. So, you know, could care less about it because they couldn't come anyway, because they only grow outside or something. Or people might just say, hey, we've got like a spinach CSA. So even if it was warm inside a market and indoors, like we're just going to CSA or we're just going to Argus. So I don't know if it would necessarily even change who showed up for winter markets. Just a few hypothetical examples.
Definitely. And those are good data in terms of actually data about what these things are. Because again, people will generalize. And again, for us too, for advocating with, say, parks in terms of like, hey, this issue is a really big issue. And it's brought up, you know, when this survey, we actually have numbers, we have data, we can make bar charts, we can do p-value, we can get
infographics.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, that's what was effective about the pros plan, is to see that of the people who filled out the survey, almost 80% of them, they'd been to the farmers market. So it should be high on their priority list.
Yeah, and the Google Analytics they just gave us back, and we are the second most visited website as well in the entire park system. We were just beat out by canoe rental. So I think that's pretty, but makes sense. But I think that's pretty good.
Keep your eye on the prize. We'll go for we'll take over canoe rental soon. This is going to be.
And I bet that's seasonal too. If they did the survey in the winter, I think the market would come out on top.
Maybe. We're always pretty high up there with either 2 or I think we're usually like number 2, but It's okay. It's a good place to be, of however hundreds of pages. So
so Stephanie, if you would like us to give you a little feedback on the survey, send it. Happy to. I've got a flexibility in my schedule right now, so I can get a pretty fast turnaround on it.
Great. Yeah, I was out of town all last week, so I wasn't able to do much work on it. But I think we can circle back in the next few days. Plus, we're all sort of trying to recover now from the food truck rally, because yesterday was a very long day for all three of us. So, but we'll have a chance to talk about it on Saturday.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you all for that great conversation. I think we're on to the next item on the agenda, which is a new business.
I do not have any new business.
No new business here.
It's not really new, but if I'm remembering right from the last meeting, there is an option for us to schedule 4 in-person meetings. Is that what I remember the city approving us for?
I think so. Let me see if I can find that email.
That's what I remember. And if so, I would like us to explore doing at least 1 or 2 in-person meetings in 2023, and then we can figure out what happens in 2024. And Stephanie, I would love for you to check into how we go about that, because I'm assuming we have to schedule the city parks chambers and things like that. And I think at least 1 or 2 in-person meetings would be good to do.
Yes, let me see if I can find more info about this. For some reason, I'm not able to find that one. Let me just look in one more place. For some reason, I'm not seeing it, but here, perhaps this is it. I don't know. I thought this was the right one, but it doesn't necessarily seem to be showing up in the boards and commissions handbook. But yeah, I can find that at some point.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard there are some people that feel left out in that way, and so that would be, I think that would be a good nod to include them, and just to make sure we're hitting it. And I personally actually kind of like the electronic ones. It is convenient schedule wise, but at the same time, it does seem like part of the purpose of this is to get inclusion, and that if that's a way to get additional inclusion, just that seems a reasonable way to do it to me.
Yeah, and in one of the fall meetings, potentially either October, November, or December, although we're hitting up against the bad weather time, would be good to have at least one of those meetings be in person. Okay, so if you could check on that for us and let us know, and then next time maybe what we can do is decide which one it is, and then Stephanie, you can be ready to go on the scheduling for that.
Where? I don't know. I just don't know why it's not showing itself to me. Because I did see something that was an update from like April, but I'm not really seeing anything.
I just tried to report it too, and I can't find it. I know there was a notice as to which ones were going to be online and which ones were still in with the caveats.
Right.
So I guess that's something then for next time. So if you do find to the contrary, let us know, or if you do end up, if you can get more detail, that would be helpful. But I think that seems like a good direction to see.
Right. Here it is. Here it is. Yeah, it was in the email I sent to you last month. Yes, 4 times per calendar year. If an in-person meeting is initiated by a vote from you all, is how we do it. Which I would assume, we need to wait till we have Jeb so that the vote can actually happen.
Yeah, no, but I think that's fine. But let's all come next time thinking about, it. I think September will be too early. It's still busy time for the vendors. But October, November, December.
Yeah, I think October, November probably makes sense. We're just trying to narrow it down a little bit for one of those would probably make sense.
Yeah.
October's still pretty hard for harvest season, but we can explore. Plus there's a food truck rally that week. So I would prefer not to have October if possible.
Okay. Well, sounds like we're zeroing in on November. So let's remember to do that next meeting.
Good.
All right, great. So now we're at second public comment.
All right. Is there any member of the public that would like to provide a commentary? Please raise your hand. I am seeing a raised hand. All right, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and talk. Please give us your name.
Thank you, Chair Young. My name is Ken Garber. I live at 28 Haverhill Court in Ann Arbor. I've been shopping weekly at the farmers market for more than 3 decades, and I love everything about the market. And I want to thank all of you for your volunteer work on the commission and for keeping it such an inviting place for the whole community. The Ecology Center's zero waste education effort at last night's event came up in your discussion tonight. I really commend your ongoing commitment to public education on waste issues. And yes, so-called compostable bags and containers have problems, with most of them not compostable in city facilities, at least not for curbside pickup. This needs fixing. But I'm calling now about single-use plastic bags. Probably this has come up before, but as you know, we're in a global plastic crisis with over 29 million tons of plastic released each year into nature, poisoning the food chain, killing wildlife, and fouling vast swaths of our oceans. Plastic production has doubled in the last 20 years to over 400 million metric tons and is now responsible for almost 4% of greenhouse gas emissions. Virtually no plastic bags get recycled. There's a growing international movement to end plastic pollution. In fact, we're in the middle of Plastic Free July, which is being promoted locally by the city through zerowaste.org, which originated in Ann Arbor. Seems to me you have an opportunity to make a difference at the local level. Many farmers markets around the country now ban single-use plastic bags intended to carry for customers to carry out multiple products. The Maine Federation of Farmers Markets has had such a statewide ban since 2021. There and in many other places, plastic is still allowed for keeping meat and fish from other products and for packaging greens and loose products like vegetables. I would like to see our farmers market gradually implement some restrictions on single-use plastic bags. I don't have a specific proposal. Maybe work towards allowing only 100% recyclable paper bags and charge customers 5 or 10 cents for each bag. Right now, I just want to register my concern as a loyal market shopper about single-use plastics and my hope that the commission could take some steps to reduce and eventually eliminate them. I'm not the only one out there who feels this way among shoppers, and I've spoken to several market vendors about it, and they like the idea, although obviously such restrictions would have to be market-wide in order for it not to cause the more responsible vendors to lose customers. Anyway, just a thought. Thank you for considering it, and thank you again for your public service.
Thanks so much, Ken.
Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do know that was an issue that Stephanie Willett was looking into before COVID. So I don't know if she got anywhere, but it was something that was brought up.
Right. And someone had actually brought this question up because I know Eastern Market had tried to do a pilot in 2018 where they tried to investigate, if they just gave away a bunch of bags, what would happen with that. And I'm not sure what the status was because unfortunately COVID happened right after that. I know another sort of constraint that a lot of folks don't see, which is sort of under the surface, is unfortunately the Food Safety Modernization Act restricts single-use availability of certain products. So, for example, if you wanted to use a paper berry basket or something like that, to be able to legally reuse it from a food safety standpoint, it would have to be able to be sanitized, which means having a plastic liner or something like that. So, and I think that's an unfortunate thing that, yes, it was coming from the right spirit of food safety, but unfortunately puts farmers in this position where they either have to spend a lot more money to continually buy reusable, recyclable things, or they are kind of put in this box of having to use plastic, which is really very unfortunate. An incident. Also, unfortunately, too, like biodegradable plastics, so-called, just don't keep greens as fresh as other things. And I'm hoping that the development of that, goes a lot quicker so that we can have a viable alternative. I will also say that we do have some fantastic vendors like Zyka Life, for example, that don't use any plastic whatsoever. They use just glass and bamboo in their teas and spices. We have a lot of vendors that do paper products. We're also really excited when customers bring all their own bags. That's great. So, I totally hear this and I agree that's a huge problem with microplastics in waterways and soil. There's got to be a lot of ways to address it. And I would love it if there was some sort of grant available to help farmers make this transition, because it is a lot more costly for them. And that's a cost that they're going to have to then give to the customer to be able to use alternatives to plastic. So again, really important issue, and definitely would love to see some movement on it. But I think an outright ban is somewhat difficult given the food safety constraints that I think are sort of invisible to a lot of folks not involved in the growing side of things. But again, super important issue. Glad that it was brought up.
Yeah. I'm wondering if the Ecology Center could come in and help brainstorm some ideas. It might be interesting to just engage them in the conversation, to come to the market and see how the plastics are being used and
Right. Well, we are part of the initiative that OSI has been doing to try and get the reusable takeout containers going. And we did have an event earlier this year at Wednesday Market where Zero Waste and Live Zero Waste came, and they actually did a whole community engagement about, the access point and alternatives to plastic containers and things like that. So we already have had that type of stuff this year at the market going on.
That's great.
And I hope to have Ecology Center continually coming back to the rallies and stuff.
Because there's one other thing too, a while ago that I don't know, does the farmers market still have canvas totes? Do they, because they had branded canvas totes a decade ago or so. Does that still?
Yes. So we actually got a bunch more 2 years ago, but they're all sold out for the ones that we can sell at market, but they are available on the Parks shop for people to buy branded Ann Arbor Farmers Market canvas totes. We also, MIFMA got a grant recently, and we just got some little like canvas token bags from them. So that was really exciting. Unfortunately, there was a huge demand, so we didn't get as much as we had hoped we would get. Because that's the other thing that, for tokens and stuff like that, like we hate to have to give, plastic in that sense, but didn't necessarily have an alternative without those token bags. And strangely enough, because of the COVID and people concerned about touching things, we've actually tried to give canvas, and people say no, I would prefer the plastic. So we're also in that strange situation too, coming from that side of it, just worrying that people are touching these things and that sort of thing. But I am seeing another person that would like to comment. So all right, 1 second. Oops. You can now address the commission. Please state your name.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, good. This is my first time calling in. Debbie Marks.
Hello,
I've been at the
Debbie. I thought it was you.
Hi, you guys. It's good to be at a meeting again. It's my first virtual. I used to come to all of the in-person meetings. I miss them terribly, and thank you for trying to arrange those again. I appreciate that. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My concern today is the birds and the mess they make. The finches have been gone for a few weeks now, and it would be a perfect time to get the nests out, power wash. The bird crap is everywhere. It's horrid, and it's getting worse. It's pooping on everything. They're pooping everywhere. I would like to see a regular power washing of the market like there used to be, without special orders having to be in place. I'm sure when they clean the pools at the parks, they don't have to have a special order. I would like to see during market hours in spring and summer and fall, when we're so full, to have it power washed regularly, twice a month, once a week would be great. It's just very filthy with the birds down there, and it's a big concern. Also, I'm so glad that Peter and Lisa keep in mind our winterization, but I'd like to rephrase the winterization of the market to just not winterizing, because it's not just winter. It really affects most people in spring and fall, and even summer we have issues. To keep going in that direction, and I know it would be hard for sides, and we're giving up parking, and that's such a big issue, but I think what would be wonderful to look into would be heat. Only during market hours, maybe solar powered, something that isn't going to be fire hazard, but something very safe, a radiated heat or something that could be solar powered. Again, we could have the schools go into how you would design this and make contests, get the community involved. But I'm glad we're going in the direction of making the market and looking toward it, maybe putting the people's feet to the fire a little bit about making it a more comfortable and beautiful experience all year round. And I want to thank you guys too for doing all of this. I mean, it's just amazing that you guys have been doing this for so long with no pay. We appreciate your dedication, and we're looking forward to Jeb. He's a fair-minded, great guy that will be great representation of the market. And again, thank you all very much. See you at the market.
Thanks, Debbie. See you on Saturday.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye-bye.
Debbie.
All right, and that is it for the second public comment.
All right, so we will adjourn at 7:01. Thank you, everybody, for a great meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Have a good one, everybody.
You too.
See you at the market. Bye.
See ya.
Fair.
Bye.